Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of EduMatch. I am super excited because today we have here with us Kevin Chavous, who is the president of Academics, Policy, and Schools for K12 Inc. So welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for being here. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about him. For those of you who don't know him, Kevin is the president of Academics, Policy, and Schools for K12 Inc. and a noted education reform leader and innovator with a well-chronicled track record of empowering families with education choice and driving change and opportunity for children of all backgrounds and circumstances. So he's worked to advance quality education programs around the nation, most notably as the Education Committee Chair of the Council of the District of Columbia, right in my backyard, where he helped to shepherd the charter school movement into the nation's capital. In addition, he was a founding board president of Washington Latin Public Charter School in Washington, D.C. Additionally, Kevin is an accomplished author. We love authors here at EduMatch, having published 4 books, including Serving Our Children Charter Schools and the Reform of American Public Education, Voices of Determination, Children That Defy the Odds, and Building a Learning Culture in America, as well as his first novel, The Plan, a political thriller. He graduated from the Howard University School of Law. Go Bison. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Same here. Same here. School of C over here. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah. And he was president of his graduating class. So again, we welcome you and we're glad to hear from you. So could you tell us a little bit about your background and who or what inspired you to go into education?
Well, I mean, first of all, did I generate that smile on your face, or that's just how you roll? Because it's just introduced with such a smiling face. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, it's easy when you talk to great people. So
well, thank you so much. Well, I tell people that on my way to public service, Sarah, I found my passion. I was elected to present folks in Ward 7, Southeast and Northeast DC, East Anacostia River. And when I got in office, my goal was just try to make sure, our community got its fair share, goods and services. At the time, we were fighting for a supermarket, a Safeway, and we wanted to make sure that whatever folks got on one side of the river, we got. But my whole trajectory changed when I visited Lorton, which was our prison at the time. You remember Lorton?
I do. I live like right down the street.
Yeah. Well, when I visited the prison and I talked to our warden about the educational opportunities for these young men who I saw, many of them were smart and had potential, and they, taking bad turns. And he said something that changed my life and my career. He said, we don't waste time and waste money on educational opportunities because 90% of these inmates are high school dropouts and most of them can't read. And that was when it hit me, the stark relationship between the uneducated and prison and a life of crime. And I started visiting our schools and talking to teachers and principals, and I saw the disparity, and I saw also how the lack of hope and opportunity, even in spite of your background, where you grew up, it all could be made up for if you had a quality education. So at the time I started to embrace, what was going on in our schools. I embraced the charter school movement. Not just that, I embraced reform in DC public schools, gave them more money than they asked for, and just began that journey. And over time, as I became more steeped in education, Sarah, I also realized that personalized learning is the wave of the future. When you look at what other countries are doing, as opposed to having their kids fit inside a designated system, they meet kids where they are and give them a diverse array of options and personalize their learning experience in a way that works for them. I became more exposed and educated about virtual learning with the advances in technologies. And, after doing some advocacy work around the country, I started advising the folks at K12, was on their board. And now, I'm very happy and excited to be part of the team that's helping to introduce America to the power associated with personalized learning and virtual education. And also make sure that we do a better job of providing those services to the families we serve.
All right. So I love that. I love that. So what are some of your passions in education and what drives you towards those passions? You already mentioned a few of them, but I'll ask you specifically.
Yeah, well, there's the thing I look for, Sarah, is whatever light is in the eyes of those kindergartners and those first and second and third graders, that it stays there throughout their learning experience. And I think far too often, not just because of the challenges in the homes of some of these kids, but uh, formal schooling takes away that light far too often. And so, what I'm looking for is to engender an inspired sense of learning for all of our children so that they all get excited about the prospect and potential associated with learning and growing and learning something every day. I'm a committed believer in lifelong learning, and it's just not about education. It's about the prospect of kids finding their potential, meeting that potential, and then finding new challenges. And the other thing is, Sarah, I firmly believe that today's children have opportunities that many generations dreamed of with technology. I really have this passion that we can maximize on the use of technology, employ things like artificial intelligence and virtual reality, and use that to make experiential learning real and live for kids, even if they're in their home or they're in a brick and mortar classroom. It almost feels like that that the biology lab is in a forest or in a field based on some of the technologies available to us. I want us to be able to let kids be exposed to a diverse array of learning potential so that they can figure out what they like, and then we can tap right into it. I have a passion around the fact that each and every American school-aged child should have equal access to a quality education, irrespective of the background. And I don't think that accident of birth should dictate the future of a child. And that's why I'm in this work. And that's why I feel that in this digital, virtual learning environment, there's an opportunity to involve and engage far more children than in the confines of a brick and mortar classroom that can hold just 20 or 30 kids.
Definitely, technology opens up the door for us to connect our students, like you said, beyond the walls of our classroom. So to connect them to one another, to connect them to experts around the world, to amplify their voices. They definitely have a lot to say, and we need to be open to listening to them. So I agree that technology has been transformative. Technology when applied,
That's right.
Yeah, it can definitely be a transformative force in our classrooms. So could you tell us a little bit about K12 Inc. and the initiatives that you have to ensure student success?
Well, K12 Inc. is the largest education provider in the virtual education space. We have a combination of managed public schools in which we have contractual relationships with school districts and folks who hold charters in certain states, and then we will come in, we'll provide the teachers, we'll provide curriculum, we'll provide the back office support, we'll provide the marketing and enrollment, we'll provide the government relations support, the whole thing to help get a school running. And what we do, we have both the full-time virtual online programs in which kids will work with a learning coach, normally a parent or a guardian, and we'll have teachers that teach, and we help train our learning coaches and get these kids involved in their full-time virtual assignments. And then we also have the blended programs. By blended programs, that means that we have a relationship generally with a school district, but it could be with a nonprofit provider, like in our Arizona school, one of our blended programs with the Boys and Girls Club. So the kids will go to that site, either the district school building or, as I said, for example, in Arizona, the Boys and Girls Club facility. They'll have their classes there, 2 or 3 days a week. We'll provide the teachers, we'll provide the face-to-face instruction, and the other couple of days a week, it will be virtual online classrooms where they'll have class connect sessions where teachers can group them according to where they are in the class, and have them participate through their computer. For a lot of folks, Sarah, you might imagine, this can be scary. I mean, people don't know what they don't know, and we're accustomed to that brick and mortar classroom experience. But what we found is with our demographic of students, we have a lot of kids who just don't thrive well in the brick and mortar environment. Candidly, we've got kids who, a high number of special needs kids. We've got kids who've been bullied. We've got kids who have safety challenges. We've got kids who have medical challenges. We've got kids who are highly trained athletes. One of our students in our Colorado school won the bronze medal in snowboarding in the Winter Olympics. So with this diverse array of students, what we try to do and what we're working to do better each day is to make sure that these kids have their educational needs met, even if they cannot necessarily thrive as much as we would like to see them thrive in a brick and mortar setting. At the same time, we're endeavoring to make sure that their educational experience is motivating, stimulating, exciting, and inspiring, because what I have found and what some of our great teachers have demonstrated is you can have those kind of worthwhile experiences even in an online setting.
Yeah, absolutely. So that integration is key. And also I love the flexibility that you mentioned. It seems like your program can help students in traditional schools as well as outside of traditional schools. So that's really cool. Okay. So let's shift gears to discuss performance in online schools. So what kind of challenges do you see that educators may face regarding this?
Well, I tell you what, this is new. For our schools in particular, and I think it's the same for many of the online providers around the country, we get most of our kids come to us and they've been to in brick and mortar schools, they've been to other schools, and they're behind. So I can tell you, only 11% of our first-time K12 enrolled students are at proficient or at grade level. So that means that the vast majority of our kids, they've been to more than one school, they come in behind. And one of the biggest challenges is making sure that we meet them where they are. And in doing that, we really focus on our curriculum, making sure that it's adaptive. And by adaptive, I mean making sure that when kids log on and the teachers start to work with them, that these kids don't get so intimidated because it assumes a certain level of proficiency and they get further frustrated. So we work on adaptive curriculum. And then the other thing we do, we really focus on making sure that it's engaging, because one of the biggest challenges when you deal with kids who come from less than worthwhile educational experience, many of them are frustrated, and it doesn't take long for them to want to check out. So we're looking every day at the best ways to engage and inspire these kids. And the other thing I would say, Sarah, our challenges are further complicated by the fact that 65% of our students, they live in an area where the only other option they have is us. They generally just have two options, either the school district where they're assigned, where they may not have had the best experience, or us. They may not have another charter school or an alternative program. So we really know that we have a special responsibility, but as a result, one of our challenges is that, many of our kids are not going to be proficient after a year. Many of our kids come in and they are behind. So our focus is on growth, and we believe strongly in student-centered accountability so that we know where kids are when they come, we can assess them, and then we judge ourselves on making sure that they grow while they're with us. And the worst thing in the world is for kids to fall backwards. We want to see that there's growth, with the goal being proficiency, but understanding that because of their special circumstances, some may not be as proficient as others.
Right, totally understood. It's good that they have that resource. A lot of times when students get so frustrated with their experiences, then they feel like their only option is to drop out. So I'm glad that they do have that option. With
Sarah, one other thing real quick. So that was, you know, I joined the company in this role last November, and the last several months in May and June, I went to many graduations. I think about 9 or 10 graduations around the country, and it was heart wrenching, but inspiring to see some of these kids, like the young man who was valedictorian at our school in Michigan, who sat next to me, and he was assisted on the stage by a couple of the teachers. He had a medical challenge, could hardly walk. He was on crutches. And as I was sitting there and they were about to call his name, I stood up along with one of his teachers to help him across the stage. And he said, "No, I'm going to get this diploma on my own." And it took him quite a while, but he did not use those crutches, and he walked across the stage to get that diploma. And talking with his family, they said that he never could have thrived, never did thrive in the brick and mortar program. He got in our school, he graduated, he was valedictorian of this class. And like the Muslim girl, graduated from our school in Nevada. And she talked about being bullied. And she talked about the fact that, every time there was some terrorist activity, people would give her a hard time and write things on her locker and call her names and beat her up. And she had dropped out of school until her mother saw this program, about our program. She signed up, and she was valedictorian of our class in Nevada. We've seen countless examples of these kids who are success stories because they found something they could believe in that helped them believe in themselves. And at the end of the day, I think that's what education should be about. And unfortunately, in today's world, one size doesn't fit all. A lot of these kids won't thrive in these traditional environments. And I share these stories because beyond, the politics of the day, I think that our folks, and frankly, your viewers and listeners, should very well appreciate the diverse challenges that many of these kids have, and oftentimes we take custody of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that our viewers and our listeners, they are passionate, dedicated educators. But we always talk about, the challenges and how to meet the needs of each child. And, the stories that you're sharing right now, those are very, they really give a glimmer of hope, for the children who might traditionally fall through the cracks. So very glad to hear those stories. So could you share with us any recommendations that you have for an updated, more informative model that accounts for what parents and educators think are important?
Well, I think that those of us who are the decision makers, those of us in my generation after me, that are driving these policies and setting school budgets, we need to listen to, what I would call the proverbial end user, these kids. Many of today's young people, they're wired differently than some of the people who are setting the policy and running the schools that they think kids want to go to. This technology has changed the game. Many kids really like the idea of experiential learning, hands-on learning. In my generation, it was like, pay your dues, go to school, get a job, work for 20 years, get promoted, and get a gold watch and retire. Well, this generation, the millennials, the Zs, they're not going to do that. And they also see, because of technology and access to peers around the world, they see how some folks are getting money, they're getting paid, or they're pursuing their life dreams just by having access to technology. So I think the recommendation is personalized learning, which is taking hold in other countries faster than here. And I think that's the big reason why many other countries are doing better educationally, is all about sort of those who are in the power structure, the power centers of America. We almost have to divorce ourselves from ourselves. I mean, we have to, get unstuck in terms of our over adherence to a structure that was put in place during the Industrial Revolution. The classrooms of most brick and mortar schools in America today are almost identical to the classrooms in the 1880s and 1890s in America yesterday. And I think the biggest thing we have to go through, Sarah, is our own sort of mind shift, because today's students are not going to thrive with the exact identical classroom setting that existed when their great-great-grandparents were in school. You know, I use this example that chances are if your great-great-grandparents went to school in the 1890s or 1900s, 1910, they took algebra in the ninth grade. Most brick and mortar settings, most school districts require algebra today in the ninth grade. What's wrong with a kid who's talented and gifted taking algebra in the sixth grade or the seventh grade, or a kid who's a little bit behind taking the 11th grade? When you have a personalized program that's tailored to the needs of kids, as opposed to having a system that forces kids to be tailored to the system's needs, then that's where the challenge comes in with today's generation. So the biggest recommendation I could make is for people to become educated about education today and about what kids are in, what their interests are, and listen to them, because they are better teachers in terms of what practices we should employ. The other thing I would say quickly is that we need to depoliticize the notion of education in America. In speeches I say this, there's no Republican or Democratic way to teach a kid how to read, write, or count. And I think that, in education, we've drawn these either or lines, that, lines in the sand. There's a Republican education plan, there's a Democratic education plan in every state house in America, in Congress. We miss the fact that those plans are guided first by the politics of the day and not the needs of children. And that's why I'm big on student-centered accountability. That's why I'm big on personalized learning. That's why I'm big on, when it comes to education for all, it really begins with education for one, this one kid. And we can't have policy in place that ignores that fact and is thinking about a political picture as opposed to individual children.
Absolutely. I love what you were saying about how we need to depoliticize it. And there does tend to be a lot of red tape a lot of times that gets in the way. And, really the primary consumer, the end user, as you said, are our students. And we need to take empathy into, the whole process of designing what school should be. And a lot of educators are doing that. So kudos to you all, and to us all, I should say. I'll put myself in that group too. But also, getting our colleagues on board. And I love what you were saying also about like listening to people who are informed on it, listening to the kids. Absolutely 100%. So what would you say would be the role of personalized learning in online schools? And do you have any examples of programs that might do a good job at this?
Well, one of the things that I've seen is with some of our kids who are behind, how through gamification, using badges and coins, it's a really good way to stimulate kids who didn't get that positive reinforcement when they felt, sort of lost, or when they were drowning in a classroom of kids that they may feel were ahead of them and they were a little intimidated. And I've sat in with our teachers on what we call these class connect sessions. So you have a computer and they group kids together, and you have 5 or 6 kids in one session, and the teacher is working with them, and 5 or 6 in another, and then the kids can raise their hand and participate. Well, I've seen how kids thrive in those class connect sessions. One of the things that we do in some of our schools that have had a number of kids who come from challenged backgrounds and are behind is they do the reteach, where they get these kids, they may not do as well. They put them in these class connect sessions and group them with some of their peers who may have done better. So you see the kids sort of helping to teach the kids, and then they do the reteaching, they take the test over, and they do well. when you talk about personalized learning, these practices, on their face suggest there's not an end all or be all when you don't do well on the test. It's all about continual engagement, continue to work with your peers, continual reinforcement. And over time, the confidence level grows. So I think that, the best of our programs, and not just us, but all these online providers in various parts of the country, they're able to hone in on that in a way that sometimes is lost or doesn't have the same impact when kids feel like they're in a classroom and they can't express themselves. We feel that we get almost more participation by kids who, are in the comfort of their own home or their learning environment, and they can raise their hand, push a button on a computer, raise their hand, they can ask a question, but they won't feel stigmatized or isolated, or someone gives them an eye roll, or they start teasing them or whispering about them. A lot of these kids have been through some bullying and have had some safety challenges, but it's almost like they can thrive in the comfort level or an environment that works for them. Last thing I say on this, Sarah, it's real important. That's why I say we got to listen to the kids. Of all the crazy stuff, the shootings and stuff, we get a lot of calls from these families all over the country. Every time there's an incident in school. And I think for many Americans who haven't experienced that stuff, I don't know they fully appreciate some of the fear that and just the scared nature of some of the families that have to go through it. As I said, I've listened to those calls, and to have a safe haven for kids, at least to have an option different than what they may be used to or what may be the source of some of their fear, I think is an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. That is so, so true. So, what is on the horizon for you and for K12 Inc. This upcoming school year? What do y'all have planned for the rest of 2018 and beyond?
Well, I have ambitious plans, and it's grounded in this core belief that all kids can learn. We get a lot of kids who have had challenges in other environments, and I am impressing upon our folks, and we have a lot of good people on the ground in nearly 35, 36 states, that all kids can learn. If you believe all kids can learn, then you also believe and understand that you have to put high expectations on these kids, because kids rise and fall based on the expectations you place on them. And if you believe in the power of high expectations on kids, then you have to put high expectations on yourself. So one of the challenges I've issued to our team is we need to put higher expectations on ourselves. We need to do better in terms of our academic performance. So we're going to do something that, most school districts won't do, most schools don't do, is we're going to link our teacher effectiveness to student outcomes. And that means we're going to make sure that as we look at the way students do on the state assessments, we're going to group them according to the teachers they serve, and we're going to work with teachers to make sure that we better align teachers' credentials with the subjects they're teaching in the classroom, and that we provide the professional development necessary. Now, I'm real excited, Sarah, about the fact that we've partnered with Southern New Hampshire University. They're one of the largest online college providers in the country. And we're working with them to create the first of its kind Masters in Virtual Education teacher for our teachers. They've looked at hundreds of hours of tape of our teachers. They've met with several of our teachers and students. And we are building a profile of what an effective teacher looks like in a virtual space. We're going to offer master's programs for our teachers, as well as credentialing and micro-credentialing, professional development. I want to make sure that our students and our families get the benefit of the best teachers we can place in front of them. And by the same token, for our teachers, many of whom come from brick and mortar environments, we want to make sure that they take advantage of the technology and that we maximize on their efficiencies and their effectiveness by giving them the additional professional development that they deserve. So we're doing all that this year. with a goal toward as we go through the year to assess where we are, make adjustments, and we're going to start really drilling down on making sure that our students grow. And the last thing I'll say on that, so if you think about student growth and student-centered accountability, it isn't, as I said, just the proficiency level above or below the line is important. It's really understanding where a kid is. So let's say a kid's at -17, then our folks want to put them on a path to get to -12, -5, -1, +4, +10, proficient, whatever. And to do that, then we need to make sure we're monitoring them, we're following them, we're working with them every step of the way. We don't want to leave anything to chance, because if we're not disciplined, our teachers and our school leaders, if we're not disciplined in monitoring where these kids are, then they can get disaffected, they can drop out, and they can't progress. And so that's all that stuff we're doing this year is part and parcel of overall design to demonstrate that, yeah, all kids can learn, but we need to make sure they learn at their own pace, and we want to help them get there.
I love that. I love that. So I want to give a huge shout out to Valerie, who is tuning in live. And she said that you dropped some jewels and that high expectations are a must. Everything rises and falls on leadership. We must build teachers' capacity to maximize outcomes. Love that. Love that. Okay. So this has been such an amazing interview. I really loved hearing your perspective, as well as all of the great work that you all are doing. So how can people get in touch with you and with K12 online?
Well, www.k12inc.com. K12.com. I'm sorry, K12.com. K12.com. That's how you get to us. If you log on, you will see our website. There's also a phone number there. And you can call us, you can punch us in, and we'll respond. We're eager to field calls from the public generally about what's going on in the virtual world and to help you enroll your child.
Well, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And also, thank you to everybody who's checking this out. Thank you to Valerie for being here. Thank you to everyone who's going to catch us on the podcast or on the replay or on the Facebook live premiere or Facebook premiere. It's YouTube live. We're on YouTube live, but we're going to have it also premiere on Facebook. So awesome. So thank you, Kevin, for taking the time out to chat with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual. Definitely appreciate you and would love to have you back on at some point.
All right. Keep smiling.
Okay. Thank you so much. Will do. Will do. And I just wanted to remind all of our viewers and listeners that we're going to take a little bit of time off, but we will be back on September 16th for Tweet and Talk Game-Based Learning with Matthew Farber. So definitely check us out, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So everyone have a wonderful, wonderful week, and chat with y'all later.